Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I hope all of you have been keeping well and are staying safe. Thank you for joining us today at the Halal in Travel Global Summit, hosted by Crescent Rating. Under normal circumstances, we would have loved to host this in a much larger in person gathering, where there's more opportunity for one on one discussions, learnings, and sharing of insights. We hope we'll be able to do this shortly. My name is Aisha Islam, and I am the Vice President at Mastercard. I look after specifically the products and innovations team, and am part of the Southeast Asia team. I lead and oversee the product strategy, management of products in line with the regional trends, product delivery, portfolio management, and also I'm responsible for identifying business building opportunities across Southeast Asia. I'm very proud to be over here today to discuss and talk about the recently launched Mastercard New Payments Index. This was a global survey which we conducted, which really focused on the rise of the omni-channel commerce, payment shifts, changing consumer payment habits, really a year after the start of the pandemic. And what we saw was the study has confirmed that people in the Asia Pacific region have adopted a digital first and cashless mindset and habits. It was interesting to see that these habits, which started out as a way to keep safe and minimize social contact, are now being deemed as both convenient, seamless, and safe, and are really going to be here for the long term. This is important as you look at it from a merchant perspective and from a business perspective, because understanding and assessing the potential long-term impacts of shifts in shopping behaviors and routines would really impact the way you interact with the end consumer. What we once saw and what we all believed, and we commonly used to hear, cash is king. And really, because of the pandemic and the causes of the pandemic, which have really resulted in the acceleration of new digital trends, cash is no longer king. People have embraced cashless and digital forms of payments in greater volumes and speed than ever before. As most of the world went into lockdown last year, and really in some parts of the world, we still are in some sort of lockdown, consumers have shifted their spending habits to embrace contactless payments and, more importantly, embrace online shopping even more. What we saw specifically in Asia Pacific is more than 8 in 10 APAC consumers have seen their access to emerging forms of payments increase in the past year alone. Interestingly, 9 in 10 used at least one emerging payment type in the last year. And two-thirds of all the respondents we surveyed said they tried new payment methods that they would not have tried if it were not for the pandemic. If you see on this particular slide, really the pandemic experience has shown consumers and businesses what all payment technologies can make possible and has increased their appetite for both choice and flexibility in how they pay. Since we've talked a bit about flexibility, I do also want to talk slightly about a new emerging trend we've seen in Asia Pacific and even in Southeast Asia. What we saw was the pandemic has fueled new needs and digital habits for consumers. And this is driving the demand for payment choices, control, flexibility, and greater convenience when managing their finances. And therefore, many have adopted buy now, pay later or installments as a payment method, including for everyday small value purchases. Our research at Mastercard has shown that 43% of consumers in Asia Pacific are willing to increase spending by at least up to 15% if they were able to pay in installments. And that's a sign that consumer behavior is shifting and evolving towards new age payment solutions. A key takeaway for businesses is that as consumer demand increases, businesses of all sizes will have to face the greater expectation to provide multiple ways to purchase and to pay. The top three emerging payment methods, which really came out of our study, really talked about A, QR codes gaining popularity in Asia Pacific. Now, when we think of QR, it really isn't new. It's been around for some time. But what we saw was that higher levels of mobile penetration during the pandemic specifically have driven the widespread use of QR codes. As I'm based in Singapore, we saw QR codes become really important as a result of contact tracing. We started seeing a lot more QR codes in other markets for things such as taxi fares, etc. Interestingly, our research has shown that QR codes have gained strong traction in Asia Pacific. 76% of respondents actually perceive QR codes to be cleaner, and 71% see them as a convenient option for in-person payments. For example, in a market like Thailand as well as in India, 3 out of 4 consumers perceive QR codes to be secure, while only 2 out of 3 perceive cash as a secure form of payment. This really demonstrates how people's greater trust in QR codes and other forms of digital payments have changed the way they perceive and look at payments in general. QR codes are also gaining traction with smaller merchants. And as smaller merchants who have traditionally accepted cash in the past, they felt the need and have had to move to accept digital payments. This move has enabled smaller businesses to not only maintain their revenue inflow and clients during these very uncertain times. Larger payment technology companies such as Mastercard have also created QR codes that offer global interoperability, meaning that customers can increase their access to ways to pay. A key takeaway for businesses and other people who may be on today's call is QR codes are quick for small businesses to set up. They can implement and take advantage of an increasingly consumer mindset of where consumers say they want to be safe and therefore they choose a cashless option to make payments. Another emerging payment trend was all around biometrics. Biometrics have been seen as more trustworthy by consumers as part of the research. Perceptions really have been that they are both safe as well as convenient, and these have been front and center for people for over quite a few years. But this has been driving people to choose payment options that give them the greatest sense of security, greater sense of peace of mind, and more importantly, more control. Our research studies show that 62% of people in Asia Pacific feel safer when using biometrics to verify a purchase rather than using a PIN. 64% of consumers are actually excited by the potential of other biometric verification methods, such as gait, or the way we walk, or even fingerprint scans, which are fairly unique. Hence, 44% are confident that they will continue to use biometrics next year as well. When you think about this from a business perspective, it's important for you to consider a couple of things. Firstly, give your customers an intuitive and consistent experience to easily validate their identity without getting in the way. 2, get access to an all-in-one biometric solution that works across multiple channels or is omni-channel in nature. And what I mean by that is face, facial, fingerprint, or voice recognition. The more options you are able to offer to your consumers, the greater is their likelihood of being more loyal with you. The third very interesting and emerging payment method which we see across the Asia Pacific region is also known as cryptocurrency. Crypto is actually gaining momentum. Consumers are increasingly showing interest in being able to spend crypto assets for everyday purchases. In fact, 61% of people across Asia Pacific said they're more open to using crypto now than they were last year. And 45% indicated that they will plan to use crypto in the next following year. What is causing this trend? And really, when we've seen consumers can buy, sell, and trade in cryptocurrency as a commodity or an investment. And it's interesting to see this is something which is fairly consistent with millennials and centennials, who are much more comfortable using cryptocurrency as compared to Gen X and the boomer segments. Nearly 3 out of 4 millennials are actually more open to using this than they were a year ago. From a business perspective, what does this mean for you? While consumer interest in cryptocurrency is high, work is still going to be required to ensure that customer choice, protection, and the regulatory compliance is there for this to be viewed as an acceptable payment instrument globally. Whilst we've talked earlier in the slides about the new payment habits which have been emerging, we also wanted to talk about the importance and the role of safety and security which come along with these new habits and these new trends. One of the side effects of the pandemic has been an increase in incidences when it comes to fraud. And that's because your cyber criminals have been really quick to capitalize on people's anxieties as well as their uncertainties. Amidst an environment of like this, rising crimes have actually led people to be a lot more concerned than ever before about both their online and their offline safety and security. That being said, 79% of consumers in Asia are open to trying new payment technologies if they are perceived to be safe and secure. We also saw as part of our survey that 1 in 4 APAC consumers said that they were victims of fraud last year. So it really is key to ensure that consumers need and want assurances every step in the way, especially when it comes to their online journey. 85% of consumers want to be given the reassurance that their merchants will provide safe payment options. What we've also seen as part of our research is consumers today are increasingly placing trust in their banks and in networks to provide tools that keep their financial information safe and secure. 45% of consumers who responded in our study said that they would place their trust in a payment provider to follow security best practices so they can be more hands-off in that journey. When I look at this from a business perspective, and as you're looking to try to gain and attract new consumers and build loyalty with your existing ones, using safety and security as a key unique service differentiator and a key USP can really set you apart from the competition while building that long-term trust with your end consumer. The other thing we saw was the rise of what we refer to as omnichannel. Access to omnichannel payment methods has grown in the last year, which really have risen to meet the evolving and emerging consumer needs. In Asia Pacific alone, 84% of consumers have seen an increase in their access to emerging forms of payments compared to the last year. 88% of consumers actually said that they had used at least one emerging payment type. Around 64% of all respondents, including a much higher segment of millennials, close to 75%, said they actually tried a new payment method that they would not have had tried if it were not for the pandemic. 80% of consumers prefer to shop at stores that have both an in-line and or in-person as well as an online presence. It was really heartening to see that 69% of respondents are more excited to shop at retailers who offer the latest payment methods. And 60% have said they would actually avoid those merchants or those retailers that do not accept electronic payments of any kind. I think what this really shows is that as technologies have evolved, they create new customer channels and experiences. For example, if we look over the last couple of decades, consumers are now have been used to doing transactions when it comes to cross-border, e-commerce, as well as contactless. And these became norms as consumers adopted new technology as well as new payment avenues. And when we look at the future, we really look at something known as integrated payments. And what integrated payments are is that you need to give consumers the option of using any form of payment when they visit a retailer. As consumer experiences proliferate, payments will also need to be across all of them. And this will require omnipresence across the technology ecosystem, which requires payments to become more and more integrated. And I always like giving this example that when we wake up in the morning as a consumer, we never think about how we're going to pay for our next cup of coffee. Is it going to be using a credit card or a debit card? Will it be a QR transaction or will we verify ourselves using biometrics? And just like we as consumers want that flexibility, we really expect our retailers and our merchants to be able to provide that flexibility to us. A key takeaway really from a business perspective is consumers will keep on increasing their demands, and businesses of all sizes have to face this greater expectation to provide consumers multiple ways to purchase and multiple ways to pay. The other thing I want to talk about is when we talk about omnichannel, what we've seen the pandemic has caused, and that has been the changing consumer attitude and preferences to contactless. While contactless may have been very prevalent in certain markets before the pandemic, we've really seen contactless now seen as a convenient contact-free option. When COVID-19 broke out, countries embarked on lockdowns and restricted movements. And during this time, consumers everywhere adopted to contactless payment methods to access what they needed to be safe as well as to be secure. And really the need of cash declined. I can give you my personal experience. Don't recall, having to go to the ATM for several months at a time because everything I was able to do was in a contactless manner and in a contactless form. A year ago, our research showed that 91% of people in Asia Pacific said they were using tap and go payments. However, today, we see that 1 in 2 consumers has switched their top of wallet card to a contactless enabled one since the COVID-19 breakout happened. And in fact, 3 in 4 consumers have said they will continue using contactless even after the pandemic has gone. Therefore, from a business perspective, what this means for you is you must continue to invest in contactless payment devices. And that is because this is essential in not only retaining your existing consumers, but also meeting the demands of your new customers and expanding your customer pool. We trust that this report can help you with the insights you need to make and your businesses need to make to become more digital, to become more resilient, agile, and flexible to the changing consumer needs, and really successfully navigate the challenging road ahead. You can use the QR code here to download the full Mastercard New Payments Index report. Before I close my session today, I would like to express my gratitude to Fazal Bahardeen and his entire team for our long-standing partnership and for making today's event possible. Mastercard values working with like-minded partners like Crescent Rating, who recognize the power of data and insights and are committed to developing the best solutions that enable businesses to plan their recovery and also plan their transformation journey. I thank you for participating today. Thank you.